Hello, travel biz owner. Welcome to my corner of the travel industry, the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur Podcast. If you're ready to have fun, be inspired, get clarity, and take action in your travel business, then you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur Podcast. My name is Rita M. Perez. And breaking news, if you haven't seen it on social media, I am officially a certified travel coach. Da-da-da-da. So I've done a lot of work with and partnerships before with the Travel Coach Network. And it's kind of been 3 years in the making that I first invested, or since I first invested in the Travel Coach program. And you're going to hear a bit about that of my story in some reels that are over on Instagram. So if you want the short version, well, I'm going to try and keep it short here too. But when I first started getting into this realm and doing coaching and consulting, and really what I feel I do more is consulting, but a lot of people use the coaching word, and coaching word is a little bit more recognizable. Knowing that there are very specific parameters when it comes to coaching, and especially when it comes to the International Coaching Federation, the organization in the coaching world that kind of certifies who coaches are, it was very important for me, if I was going to be coaching you all, either through here on the podcast, or even in one-on-one consulting sessions, or in shorter group programs that I do offer, I wanted to make sure that I had the right tools under my tool belt, because 5 years ago when I first got into this, everybody and their mother was calling themselves a coach. And me personally, I'm not trying to dog anyone, except there's a certain few, there might be a certain few that I'm trying to dog, but neither here nor there. But there's people who just use the word coach flippantly. How I feel they just call themselves a coach to call themselves a coach. And I think that's me personally, I think that's irresponsible. Now, do I think everybody needs to have a whole certification? Probably not. But for me, it was very important that I was getting the right tools to have in my tool belt and to have in my skill set, especially if this responsibility, this responsibility, what I feel is a very big responsibility to help you be a better business owner through all the different avenues that I have to do that. I don't take that lightly. And so it was really important for me to get this certification. So after having procrastinated for 3 years, I am finally a certified travel coach. And I bring the ICF into this because the Travel Coach Network, that program, is International Coaching Federation accredited, which means that Sahara, who's the founder, does have to go through, I guess it's a licensing, or at least an accreditation. She pretty much has to go through some sort of process to make sure that it gets accredited with the ICF every single year. So that even heightened my interest into the program. And so now I'm officially certified. Fast forward 3 years. So I feel much better about calling myself a coach now, because I do have that certification, and I did go through some coursework, and I had to submit assessments and different projects and things like that. You may see a course coming down the pipeline because of some of the coursework that I was doing within the program. But I am just glad to have that officially notched. I know many of us buy into programs sometimes and then don't do anything with it. And I had been waiting on that, and I was okay, we gotta close this open loop. So your girl is officially a certified travel coach. Now, I'm a little bit different because I know most travel coaches are in using travel as a transformation, whereas I'm more of a business coach. So that is kind of my unique lens when it comes to coaching. which this kind of is like a coaching episode in itself. I have a very special workshop that is coming July 29th. If you just want to head over to the show description, you can sign up because there are limited early bird tickets. This is going to be super affordable, and it's going to make total sense about what this workshop is as we go through today's podcast episode. So pin that idea because I'm going to tell you more of the details once we get to the end of this episode. So, and this episode really is kind of like a preface to that workshop because you need to know who your right fit client is before you really do anything in your business. And I say that because for the most part, just from my own personal experience, and then also knowing many other of you who's I've just talked to, we don't jump into the travel business. Like, we don't start a travel agency thinking about other people per se, like necessarily. We know we're going to have to work with other people because we're going to need clients. But when we talk about why we got into the travel industry, for the most part, it's because we love travel and because we wanted to make money off of something in the travel industry or because of travel. So a lot of the marketing, when you first get started, kind of looks from that vantage point. It's a lot of you marketing and not necessarily what you can do to help your clientele. I think of Stuart from Mad TV, look what I can do, is kind of a lot of the marketing that I see, either newbies or people who just haven't figured out who their ideal client is or what the right messaging for their business is. And it's because you're going at this from an angle of you and you are number one and your business revolves around you, and that is not who your business revolves around. So hopefully this episode is either going to serve as a refresher or maybe it's going to drop a lot of knowledge bombs on you, because I want to kind of turn around that narrative that you should not be at the forefront of your marketing. It really should be your clients that are at the forefront of your marketing. So they are really the core. And I think of this I'm going back into my master's degree coursework. So if you didn't know, I have a bachelor's degree in hospitality management, and I have that's my bachelor's degree. My master's degree is in nonprofit management. Everything in my coursework for that master's degree had to do with the mission of the organization. And so, again, we're not nonprofit entities, but kind of taking some of those principles. The mission of your business is really to make sure that your clients are having a spectacular experience. There's a lot of little splinters that come off of that, but that really is the core of having a travel agency. And that is the core of why people come to you and hire you. It's because they want to have a really great travel experience. They kind of sort of know maybe what they want to happen on this trip, or they kind of sort of have a mission of their own for this trip. They don't know how to make it happen. Or they just don't have the bandwidth to make it happen, or something else is kind of everybody has their own reasons that they would rather hire a professional like yourself versus doing it themselves. And I say that as somebody who's hired many different professionals because I haven't wanted to do the type of work or if I haven't wanted to do it, I don't have the skills to do the type of work that the professionals that I have hired to do. Kind of like my branding designer. I wish I had chef's kiss stellar branding, graphic design, and I wish I had that kind of background. I do not. Similarly, sometimes I wish I moonlit as an attorney, because sometimes I'm maybe if I was a contracts attorney, I could see myself if I was going to do a do-over in my business. Those are things I might want to consider, but we're not we're not at that juncture point. I don't know if we're ever going to be at that juncture point. So instead of me pretending or trying to moonlight or trying to figure it out by myself, it's just better for me to hire somebody else out. So you also have to think in like that mentality, because not everybody has that mentality. And we all should probably be very familiar with those people who definitely just want to DIY their trips. And there's a time and place for everything, but you should never be in the mode of trying to convince somebody who wants to DIY their trip as to why they should want to work for you, because I feel like you are probably talking to a rock wall if you're trying to convince, like, you shouldn't be putting your efforts convincing those types of people. Your efforts should be in like being able, not necessarily convince, but wanting to work and wanting to communicate with people who already value that type of information. So right there already, we're putting the blinders on who your type of client is, because the work that you do is not a DIYer's type of work. Thinking about that should already like give you a couple of ideas of maybe where you should go versus where you shouldn't go in marketing, and also like who you should be talking to versus who you shouldn't. Just thinking about that principle, earlier this year, I did have an episode come out talking about that, which I'm pretty sure has some maybe like lead generation or something like that in the keywords if you want to go take a look at it. But it is better even if we can narrow it down a little bit more, because if you just say you want to work with people who also like working with other people, that's a little hard to narrow down, because there are so many people who would rather hire out help, hire out assistance than would want. It's probably like 50-50 if we're really looking at it. It's just too many people, and you cannot serve the whole world, nor should you. And just like your colleagues, like there is so much business like to still go around, but you have to be in the right circles. And the easiest way to figure out what are the right circles are to figure out who is your right fit client. So I'm going to try and help you determine that with your episode, because once you do determine who that is, or what type of person they are, or what sorts of values might be kind of like in that thread, everything in your marketing becomes so much easier. And I take it like from my own personal experience, and then I also take it from one of my recent coaching clients who she was just recently raving about like how I kind of helped her put the feet to the fire and said, okay, this is what you're going to focus on, even though she kind of knew that that's the type of travel that she wanted to focus on. But she said a recent discovery call, she felt like she was kicking butt in the discovery call. It was so much easier to write the lead magnets, and it was so much easier to like send out proposals, because she honed in on exactly who she wanted instead of everybody. I know you think you're probably leaving like money on the table by not helping everybody out, but I promise you everything gets so much easier when you put those blinders on. Also, kind of going into this episode, thinking about like really flipping the script. And thinking about like how can you use your own skills. And there are many skills that you have developed from personal experience, from professional experience, from whatever you may have done before you got into the travel industry. So flipping the script on also like, what are those skills? Who are the types of people that like you seem to like gravitate towards, or that you like to have conversations with? Also, so that you can like figure out what is the type of help that you can actually help your clients with in terms of the help that they're going to need when planning their trips. So I'm talking about this too, when you're thinking about the services that you offer, what are some of these services? Like, what would some of these services or some of these resources look like? Recently, there was a post that I had in the Strategic Travel Entrepreneurs Facebook group about, I think we were just talking like about our different common interests, and someone had mentioned tennis, and you might be listening. Hello, you know who you are. And she had mentioned that she sells a lot of different travel, but she would love to just sell these luxury tennis trips to women, but she doesn't know if it's possible. So part of this exercise too is that I want you to get out of like what you currently see and start imagining and thinking of like, if that was the only thing that you did, what would you have to do to get there? Like, what would that kind of life look like? Like, you're sitting here in present day, but in the future, if you did run your dream type of trips, so for this person, it's luxury women's tennis trips. For you, it's probably something totally different. What would that be? Because that can also help to shape who exactly is your right fit client. Now, I also want you to know, like, just because you say, like, this is who you focus on in your marketing doesn't mean you can't do any other trips. It just means, like, that's probably the one thing that people come to. They can be curious about other things. And it's so interesting because I saw another marketing person this week talking about the same thing. She talks a lot about TikTok marketing. But she helps with other forms of marketing too. Like you might initially come to her for TikTok, but she's also going to help like with your sales funnel, with email marketing, setting up webinars, any other things like that. That's very similar to like what many of us do. And that's exactly what you do as a travel advisor. Like you might only want to focus on those tennis trips. But what if one of those women also want to do like a river cruise with their husband or with their spouse? It doesn't mean you can't say no to her. You can definitely do that. But it means like all your marketing is focused on like one certain target market so that I think of bees and honey. You're attracting the sweetness, you're attracting the right types of clients that you exactly want to be attracting, and kind of letting go of those tire kickers or people who might not be doing the trips that you want to sell. Because also, if you're attracting people who want to go into the types of trips you want to sell, you're going to be having such a more fun time. Like you're going to be so much more engaged in that type of trip versus a type of trip that you're like dreading, and every call you're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not going to be a pleasant experience for you, and it's not going to be a pleasant experience for the potential client on the other side of that. And when we're talking about referral business, they're probably not going to be referring you out because that experience was not that great. So if you're kind of like, I cannot filter down that far, I want you to just flip that and think about, well, if you're thinking that that can't work, what would it take to make it work? Because then you have a lot more possibilities that are open there. Then I'm also sure you're going to have a lot of ideas to make this work. And hopefully this catches on like wildfire, like within your being, that you're like, this is the thing that I need to focus on. Like, and this is exactly how I know how to make it happen. And it's because of that, because you've figured out exactly like what are the right types of trips or what are the right types of clients that you want to be working with. So now, if you're kind of like, I have no idea, I'm very brand new, I don't know which way to go from here or there, I do want to let you know also that a hack, quote unquote, to this is that you are probably some version of your ideal client. And I'm going to take you kind of down memory lane in here in how I started within the travel industry. So I initially, like when I was putting all of my marketing together back in 2010, 2011, starting as a baby travel advisor, I focused on groups. But if you looked on my website, I focused on all types of groups. Like there were cruise groups, beach groups, ski trips. I hate skiing. I don't even I remember the exact photo of a women's like ski trip. And I'm like, I don't even know why I had that, because I just wanted to sell all the groups. I'm like, you're cuckoo head, Rita. So fast forward, like about 8 years, I kind of fell into doing group cruises because I'm in Florida. Cruises come a little bit natural. I love that. And then I was booking a lot of like groups for just friends or acquaintances of friends. So I was like, okay, definitely not doing those ski trips anymore. We're just going to focus on group cruises and kind of like just talk about group cruises. That is still very, very broad if I say I'm going to do group cruises for everybody, because there are a lot of different types of groups. Also, there are a lot of different types of cruises and lots of different types of itineraries. So like you need to keep narrowing it down a bit. I remember at that point kind of being at this juncture, like I really want my business to be successful, but I don't know what the thing is, and I don't know like why my marketing isn't working. So I started like investing some time in working with a couple of coaches with the host agency that I'm at. And one of the coaches had recommended, well, you're a solo woman traveler, like why don't you focus on that? And I stewed on that, and I'm like, but I don't really, like, if I'm thinking about a trip, my first instinct is not to be like, I'm going to book a trip so I can go by myself. That's not like, I may do a lot of work trips by myself, but I don't want to travel by myself. Like, I don't want to experience new things by myself. I'd rather go with a group of friends, group of family, group of like just people that I know and that we have stuff in common. And so I like that was a very important lesson for me, because if I did tune in and just follow that route, I say that because you do have autonomy in what you should be picking. And just because somebody thinks that you should be run one route doesn't mean that that's the exact route that you might want to be going to. And I hope kind of like how I thought through that process myself kind of helps you in your thought process. Because if you felt you should be doing something because somebody else told you should be doing it, but it's not really ever worked, it could be because there is some sort of misalignment, which was exactly what was happening to me. Because like when I started thinking about it, like for me, solo female travel is a lot like backpacking and just traveling yourself. And it just wasn't the type of travel style that is me. It just didn't feel me. And maybe like a year or so later is kind of when I figured out, hello, Rita, I love putting groups together and I love putting events together. And I was doing that kind of like on an annual basis with a local tech company here in Orlando. I was putting their team retreats together and I loved it. I love all of that logistical planning, especially when it comes to planning things on a cruise ship. And I just, like, I thrived off of that. Like, I'm a big puzzler. And so, like, for me, that is, like, I get a high from putting the puzzle pieces together. And that's kind of like what a cruise retreat felt like to me. Also, when I say, like, you are some version, like, I am a small business owner. And I also want to help other small business owners. And so that's kind of how, like, cruise retreats started coming to be, because like when I started evaluating myself, I wanted to help people who were like me that own businesses and wanted to like get their own groups together. And then on the flip side of that, with the team retreats, I know what it feels like to feel like so insignificant on a team. Like you don't have any impact. Like your work when you're working for a company, how it can feel like you don't have any impact, that nobody's listening to you, that you're not making any sort of difference on the job because your leadership frankly does not care. And I did not want any employee to feel like that. And so those were kind of like my two biggest drivers when it came to the retreat, knowing that the company that I was working with, that tech company, the reason that they invested in these cruise retreats was because they did not want their team to feel how I felt in my full-time job at the time. And that was so important to me. Like that is really the fueling drive behind focusing on cruise retreats. Not only do I want to help whoever is the leader of those retreats feel like a bad booty because they just like put together a spectacular event, but I also want to make sure that the attendees of these retreats were also feeling the impact. I could like go on and on because there's also like we talk about this, Sahara and I, about like the studies that have been done about the impact of open, green, and blue spaces. And that could be so impactful for somebody that is an employee on a team, and then also somebody who's a business owner and just needing some realignment. So that's kind of my long and very introspective journey on how I kind of like landed on cruise retreats, because I was also being impacted even though I wasn't like going on a retreat myself. And so it just made my heart sing, because I feel very strongly that you have to have like some sort of visceral reaction to the work that you're doing, and hopefully it's a good visceral reaction. Like I feel like sparks fly when I think about it. I think about tearing up because it does like pull on my heartstrings so much. And I'm starting to recall like this era in my time, especially when I was marketing very heavily on that side of things and on that business. Like there is such a like a passion, a power when you are able to align like your purpose and exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and how you can help support other people with the gifts that you also have. And that's what I mean with finding like who your ideal client is. And it can be like finding your right fit client. It can be the right types of trips, kind of like the trips that I want to sell are cruise retreats. The clients behind that are team leaders or business owners. Behind that is also that they want to make sure that they put on a really great event for their community, whether that's the team or whether that's other business owners. So kind of like breaking it down. I always love to talk about my Shrek and my onion layers. And these are the different onion layers that you are also going to have to break down for yourself. I know that you have some sort of a mission, and it is not just, I want to make this much money and I want to make that. Like that is just the cherry on top, because you making an impact on neurodivergent families who haven't been able to vacation for years because they didn't know how they could vacation with this recent diagnosis is changing their world. Similarly, when I think about travel advisors who focus on widows and widowers who want to get away but don't want to have to explain themselves, what a crazy, powerful mission, especially if you've been in those shoes before, that you understand exactly what that client needs and you can build a trip around what their travel needs might be because you understand that. You are also changing their world. We really have to think about this from a more like impact level and how we can change like not only ourselves and our families and our friends, but how we can change other people in a positive way like this. That might be helpful for you to think about like who you are. What type of person are you? It doesn't have to like go as deep as maybe some of the examples as I've been sharing, but whatever it is that you're finding like, oh my gosh, like I'm so lit up about this, that might be the right type of trip or the right type of people that you want to be working with. So, I'm just looking here at my notes. When you break it down, because I was breaking down like the cruise retreats, because again, it could be a couple different avenues where it's a certain type of travel or if it's with a person. So when I think about those cruise retreats and breaking it down, who is it for or who would do something like this? I'm thinking back to that tennis example. Like, who are the types of women that would want to go on luxury tennis trips? Now, I'm not a tennis person, but I would definitely love to go on a trip around the world with some sort of common theme that I'm like a big fan of. Like I know also podcast listener, somebody that's putting together a wellness Portugal trip. And sounds like right up my speed. It might not be up your speed though. So like really thinking about the different aspects that light you up. So when I think about like the certain types of trips and breaking it down, I told you team leaders and business owners are really my right fit client when I think about my agencies, my travel agencies clients. What do they want from that? And here we're peeling down the layers. One, I think about like value, like what do they value? And when I think about it, like when I think about the COO that I was working with for these retreats, they valued not generic experiences, which is why we were doing retreats on cruise ships. They valued the team, like community was a very big focus of theirs, making people like feel like they were included. They did all sorts of fun activities, like fun was a huge value for them. Also making sure that the CEO got his spotlight. So thinking about like those types of values, like when you break down, because you may have had, like if you don't have like a big book of business just yet, or if you haven't booked a lot of trips, maybe you have like certain clients that you just loved working with. What about them did you love working with? And it can't be, you need to go deeper than just they wanted to work with a professional. That is not deep enough. Why do they want to work with a professional? What about working with a professional makes things easier for them? Also, why are they wanting to go on certain types of trips? Like, what is the motivation about around going during certain types of trips? Man, so I recorded a podcast episode with Sahara that is coming out soon. A lot of what I'm talking about here, we kind of like talked about in that episode also, just going like very intrinsically when it comes to the marketing. So I mentioned like, why does your client want that type of travel? What might be some of those values around that type of travel? And then like, when you think about like the what, then also thinking about what is the why? Like, why exactly do they want that? And keep digging in. Like you might have to do it like, I think about it almost like 7 rings of, or what is it? The Kevin Bacon 7 levels of separation. That's not the right phrase for it. But I feel like the easiest way for you to do this is just to take a blank sheet of paper and just start brainstorming, just start brain dumping everything that you've thought about, the trips that you want to be selling. Who are the types of trips that would want those types of, or who are the people that would want those types of trips? What do your types of trips look like? Like, what would you include? What would be in that experience? Like, maybe it is a cruise group that has like a couple other components. Maybe it is just Alaska cruises for families, maybe for neurodivergent families, maybe for I don't think newlyweds are going to travel together, but like really thinking about what that is, because I guarantee you, if I like talked about a couple different demographics right now, like families with young kids, some people you get excited by that. Other people you're like, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Kind of like I was mentioning last week with the cruise ship inspection, kind of like the content that you're going to be getting. This big decision of figuring out the types of trips that you want to sell and to who you want to sell that to is going to be your guiding light for everything else that you do within your travel agency, which is why it's really important to be spending some mindful time thinking through this, fleshing through this. Now, you don't have to like spend weeks upon weeks. Like maybe you just spend like a couple of hours thinking about this person and all the possibilities for this person and all the different layers of this type of person. And then you start to get to work. Then that's when like you can take the idea of this person and what they value and what's important to them and start thinking about like, okay, well, where can I find these types of people? And you'll be able to figure out where to find them based on the answers of some of these types of questions. Like, what do they want out of life? Where would they hang out? If somebody's wanting a little bit something more meaningful, something more wellness focused, something that's important to the family, it's going to be easier just to kind of like narrow everything down from there. But I know that sometimes it is hard to articulate that if you've never articulated it before, because it is different type of marketing. Like I had mentioned in the beginning, you're marketing with a lot of you in the beginning, and we need to take you out of the equation, at least from this perspective. You need to show, now that you kind of know like who this person is, who these types of trips are for, you need to show why you're the right person to be planning these types of trips. And it could be mostly it's going to come from like some sort of life experience that you have had, or just that you've been doing a certain amount of trips and you've gained passion for that type of person or those types of trips throughout the years. I say all this because I am also here to help you out. Like, remember, I was telling you, I'm hosting a mini workshop that is happening Wednesday, July 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern time, approximately-ish 90 minutes. Now, if you've never attended a workshop with me, you do get work done. The name of this workshop is called Client Call Out, because hopefully now you have a better idea with some of the things I told you to ponder here. You have a better idea of who your ideal client is, but you might not be exactly sure how to call them out in your marketing and specifically in your social media. And that's exactly what we're going to work on during Client Call Out. So I'm going to give you like a couple different frameworks to kind of use. You are going to get a couple of social media templates, because I want you to come out of this workshop with a couple of social media posts that you can use and see like how might they be working. And again, like when I say a couple, I'm saying like 3 to 5 posts. So that may be like a week or two of posts. It's not going to make things dramatically different, but I will hopefully make sure that by you like really honing in on this, drawing that line in the sand, and really assuming this as your new role as a travel advisor, that you are going to take ownership of this person and you're going to really dig in deep into like what their mind space really is, so that you know exactly how you need to be talking to them. You know exactly what their pain points are, so you know how to connect with them on social media. That is the big piece. And that's like, when I think about the suggestion for myself of solo female traveler, I'm like, I don't even know what that person is or like what that person would think about, because again, I don't want to travel by myself. I want to travel with other people. So I invite you to join us. It is just $25 for the first 25 people who sign up. So I do have early bird rates. Price will jump up from there to $40 after the first 25 tickets. So do not snooze on that opportunity, because I would love to see you there. You're also going to get hands-on feedback from yours truly. So if I feel like you need to hone in a little bit more, a little bit tighter, I'm going to say that, and I'm going to be direct. And I'm also going to give you a couple of suggestions on how you can do that. So if calling out your client on social media feels a little bit hard because you don't want to alienate anybody, this is exactly the type of thing that we're going to be working on, so that you can get a little bit more comfortable with calling out your client in your marketing. Because we're not only starting like with social media, some of these principles are going to help you with like your website copy, when you're putting flyers and graphics together, when you're talking at networking events. But you need to put these things into practice, and this is one of the best ways to put this in practice. So the link is in the show description. Let me know if these pointers were helpful for you, if you love my little onion layer exercise. And I can't wait to see you at Client Call Out, but also at next week's podcast episode, where we have a special guest. So I'll talk to you soon, everybody. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today. Remember to check out the show notes for all relevant links and resources from today's show. See you next time.